morning and good afternoon. It looks like it's straight up at noon East Coast time, and we're really happy that all of you could join us. We have a live audience here, but most of us are going to be remote today. So there's going to be opportunities to chat and get questions. I'm going to ask our hostess, how do I get the chat questions?
I will come up for you.
You're going to be coming back up to see? Oh, that's awesome. So today's, we should be through the content of this in about 30 minutes, and there's going to be plenty of time for questions, and I really want you to be served, so please ask them, chat them into us, and we'll make sure to cover as many as we can today. Fair enough? All right, let's get started. This is one of my favorite topics because it's something that is always available for every self-directed IRA account, is to do private lending. And I didn't know much about this at all until I became the owner and actually the founder of NuView IRA. And it's been quite a journey for me because one of the most exciting things about running this company is the fact that I get to see what other people do, and they are willing to teach. And that's what's really great to be part of Self-Directed IRA, because many people will help you along the way. You can partner, you can do all sorts of things with other people. So I've gotten a lot better in my investments simply by being around the same kind of people that you're around every day. So I really enjoy that. Now, just to start off, I just want you to understand that I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA. That may make this more interesting, I'm not sure, but that's a special shout out to all the CPAs and attorneys out there that keep us straight. I'm just saying that from a standpoint of your individual situation is going to be unique from everybody else's, and there's going to be some questions you're going to have. I always love to ask to push you back to your own advisors, but sometimes they don't know much about self-directed IRAs. So we're going to teach you a little bit about this in the context of investing. Many people open their accounts and they go, well, now what? What do I do with this? I understand that a self-directed IRA gives you all sorts of choices, and it does. More choices than you can imagine. I like to kind of put it this way, that a self-directed IRA allows you to invest in everything that the IRS doesn't prohibit. The IRS prohibits very few things, and you'll see if you go to our website, NuViewTrust.com, you will see a lot of listings of prior seminars and educational material, and you'll see go to the first one and talks about the basics of IRAs, because you'll learn the kinds of transactions you're allowed to do and the ones that you aren't allowed to do, and the ones you're not allowed to do. There's about 6 categories, mostly collectibles and life insurance that you're not allowed to put in, but almost everything else you can, with some restrictions based on the relationship of the parties. We're not going to spend a lot of time today on that. We're going to focus in on this particular type of investment called private lending. And so all of this can be done no matter what type of account that you hold with NuView Trust. And there's lots of different kinds of accounts. There's 4 different types of IRAs. There's the traditional, the granddaddy, back in 1975 that was created. And by the way, not many people know why that was created. Well, it was basically businesses that were lobbying Congress because most of the big businesses at that time paid company pensions. And we were getting our clocks cleaned, we being the US, by the Japanese cars. And there was a lot of people saying, well, it's not fair because our auto industry can't compete because we're paying these pensions and some of these foreign manufacturers are not. And so Congress passed the rules on IRAs and 401ks soon after to kind of take the heavy lifting and quote the competitive advantages away from the foreign countries. But the problem is now we're responsible. We are responsible for our own retirement plan. It's not going to be getting 50% of your last paycheck that you earn for the rest of your life. Things have changed, and so therefore that's been with us for now, I guess that'd be 45 years, 46 years, long time. And so most of you watching weren't around in the workforce when that happened, and it actually happened before I joined the workforce too. So all the types of IRAs, a simple, a SEP, a Roth, and a traditional. You can also use a solo 401k plan. That's actually what we provide to individuals that husband and wife own a company, and they can both be in the same plan, but it's very limited members. They call it a solo 401k, but other owners of that business and their spouses are also able to be part of it. That is a really cool type of plan if you qualify for it. The health savings account, those go with high deductible healthcare plans. If you're in it, you probably don't view this as sort of like a retirement plan, but it's actually better than a retirement plan because you can get the money out early without taxes for qualified medical reasons, but yet you can still sock it away, $7,000, $8,000 a year. So a lot of people do that in addition to having their IRAs. You can have educational accounts, savings accounts. Not many people do understand that, but you can put $2,000 a year away for multiple dependents and also have all of that growth tax-free. There's sort of a thought line through all these accounts, and it's all about eliminating or reducing or delaying taxes. So that's why it's on the NuView Trust platform. It's because we're custodian of those accounts and you get to direct them. So, and you can see on the screen here, it says, it kind of does a special call out for Roth IRAs. 10, 15 years ago when I used to speak about this, not many people understood this. Now people do, and we're starting to see Roth IRAs accounts build in comparison to the other ones. But they're pretty phenomenal because what they do is they let you put money in and you'll pay the tax on the amount that goes in, not extra tax, but the tax that you would ordinarily pay, you don't get a tax deduction for contributing to a Roth. But what's amazing is the fact that when you retire and you pull it out, there's no taxes on it. And I'm told that, I'm not there yet, but I'm pretty close. You can see the gray hair. And I'm told that people that are truly retired, the last time that they want to pay taxes when they stop working. Because when they stop working, it's not drawn out by the employer. And a lot of times, unless you're self-employed, your employer does the deduction out of your paycheck and sends it in. You don't see it. And all you sweat is did I take enough out? Do I have to write a check to the IRS? Well, you're writing a check to the IRS the whole year. Your employer is just being that tax gatherer for you. So we all get hit with taxes if we have success, and sometimes it's kind of awkward because if we're in the higher brackets, we complain more, but yet that is a symbol of success. But what we have here is a tool that your retirement doesn't have to be taxed, and that's the way it works in a Roth. 2 weeks ago, I was on stage here talking about a Roth conversion, so I know that particular talk is also on our educational platform, so please go take a look at that. Get the basics of this to understand it. Now you see this eye chart here, and it's not meant to be an eye chart so much, but I will tell you, I'm going to put my glasses on because I can't really read it without it. This is an example of how taxes can really rob you of developing a long-term retirement plan. On the left here is the compounding. Now this is kind of it's to make a point, but if you are able to be in an investment that gave you 100% return every year, this is what it would look like if it doubled every year for 20 years. You'd have $1 million, but you'd only have $1 million if it wasn't taxed. But what if 25% of that was taken away? And if I take a look at all of our clients, I would guess that that's probably the average tax rate. We have clients that make a lot of money and we have clients that make very little money, but they're all assiduously focused on having a great retirement. This is what happens if you try to do it outside of an IRA or a tax-advantaged account. You're going to pay your ordinary income tax on that, and it cuts it down to 72. This just makes a point. We can rerun these numbers at 10%, at 12%, whatever you think the gain is. But it massively attacks the balances that you're growing in your account. So this is a bit of a shocker to see this, but if you invest in a tax-advantaged way, it's tremendous. Every now and then I'll buy an asset and I'll sell an asset, and sometimes in the current rules, you can be taxed up to 20% on long-term capital gains. In addition, you get the Obamacare health tax on top of that, which is 3.8%. So what I was used to in my younger years at 15% of long-term capital gains, now it's 23.8 for many, many people, depending on your tax situation, personal tax situation. So avoiding those taxes and being able to move from one type of an account to another is important. Now, many people in real estate say this. They say, well, Glenn, you can do a 1031 exchange in real estate. That's really, really cool. I know we have some people in the audience that are in real estate, but you familiar with that?
Yeah, I have 2 properties in 1031.
You have 10, so you've been through the process, right? It's kind of a like-kind exchange, right? And you have to have a third party handle the paperwork.
Right.
But the nice thing is it allows you to take the gains and bury them into the new property, right? And avoid paying taxes. Well, you can do that in an IRA, but it's even better because you don't have to go into another piece of property. You can go from real estate to lending to invest in a startup business, all without going through an intermediary if it's on the platform. So that's really, really neat, all those choices that you have. There are some people that you cannot deal with in your IRA, and I'm just going to touch on them briefly. And it's generally, think of it like this, is your IRA is never meant to benefit you while it's an IRA. So you cannot get a benefit from it. Sort of like you can't buy the property on the beach and go stay in it for a couple days and rent it for a couple days. And believe me, that's everybody's dream in Florida. You can do that, and there's other things that you can do, and there's some really good educational content about that. You know, if you like to stay in the beach in Smyrna Beach, which is our closest beach in Orlando, is just buy one on the beach, keep it in your IRA, and rent one in the same unit, but it's just not the unit that you have in your IRA. Actually, my brother did that, and it's turned out really well for him. So if you really enjoy investing in that type of investment, go ahead and do it. You can do it. Here's what you can't do. You can't get a beneficial use out of it. We understand that. But you're also not allowed to swing a hammer and rehab the kitchen of your IRA on real estate, because you're making a contribution, a non-cash contribution. But you know what isn't prohibited? Is the number one thing that you can do for any property you buy or any investment you make. There is no banning using your own creative mind to do it. Nothing illegal about that. So you can go figure out who it is that you want to work on that. They'll charge your IRA the least amount of money, have your IRA purchase the contracting skill of somebody else to go do it. There's other things about being on title on this. So for instance, if I'm married, I'm not allowed to sell my IRA property to my wife. I'm also not allowed to do that with any of my parents or grandparents or my children or grandchildren or their spouses. So there's certain family members, once again, a lot more education online about that. But outside of that, that's a very small group of disqualified party. You can't go start a business and fund it with your IRA, even though there's lots of people out there that'll say, I'm going to teach you how to do that. Don't forget, there's a lot of people willing to take your money to teach you to do something that's very, very much puts you at risk. They're okay. It's a one-time deal for them. That's why I ask you to go back to your CPAs and your tax attorneys and talk to us and learn from what we teach you, because we want to keep you out of that. There's no need for you to be in the gray area at all. It's black and white in what you can do in an IRA, and it's pretty exciting about all the things you can do. So with NuView, you're basically free from the constraints of the traditional marketplaces. So lots and lots of different things can be held in IRAs. There's some really creative stuff, and I'm not going to get too deep into that. But certainly lending is the second one on the list here. We're going to talk about that. Probably about 50% of our thousands of clients are all invested in one type of real estate. But I kind of view lending, we don't track it this way, but I view lending as probably about 80% real estate based too, because real estate tends to be the security instrument for that property. So you have opportunities to do that. But you'll see the other things listed here. And it says secured and unsecured notes. I don't like unsecured notes. I'm going to go on the record for that. Although it is not expressly prohibited by the IRS, this is something that probably makes sense. If you're going to lend your IRA to somebody, I don't care if you're lending something out of your sock drawer, you want something that you can hold over the borrower if they don't pay you back. And you don't want to have to go get a lawyer. You don't want to have to do all those kind of things if you don't have to. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. You can buy private stock, limited partnerships. You can even buy structured settlements. These slip and fall settlements that are paid over time, you realize you can buy them and actually get them switched over and retitled to you based on the court. It's a great way to put it in your IRA. And there's companies that'll do that for you. So all of these choices are available. It's a huge group, but we're going to narrow it down today. And you're going to become the bank. As you can kind of see in the picture here, and we're here just outside Orlando, but many of you are joining us from other cities. If you notice the larger or the taller buildings in almost every city has a bank or a credit union at the top. Any idea why? Why do you think banks, do they own all those buildings? The way it works is this typically. The banks will have the downstairs lobby for their banking center, but mostly they'll be up on the third, fourth, fifth floor doing their operations. So they'll take a piece of the business and then they pay a lot of money to get their name up there. They're not generally the owner of the building. They may not even be the majority occupier of it, but they put it up there. And the only point is that banking is lucrative. Now you'll see a whole lot of stress testing and a lot of stuff in the marketplace right now, and there's banks that are failing. Well, the banks that are failing typically, were focused on too much exposure on any one thing, and they were buying a lot of long-term CDs and a lot of short-term investments. But the rules and the regulations around banking allow banks to lend out anywhere from 7 to 10 times the amount of their deposits. That's a pretty cool idea. And in most times, they're pretty successful. And in most times, that's why they occupy the tops of the building, because it's such a lucrative business to be in. I'm only saying that from a standpoint of this, is there's all sorts of regulations around banks, and there's always a fight. Maybe one party says, deregulate. The other party says, no, we've got to regulate everything, because you can't trust the banks. Well, wherever you feel about that, the reason that there's so much focus on banks, that's how money gets into the economy, and that's how it stimulates the economy. When the Treasury prints new notes, it actually is spread out through the economy through the banking system. But it's no longer we can look at the bank and say, how do they get to do this? Because you have the right to do it yourself as a private lender. And people go, private lending, that sounds risky, it sounds complicated, it sounds tough. And, mortgages are around 6%, between 5.5% and 6%, as I'm speaking to you today. And who would want to lend out money at 6%? I'd want more from that. Well, the fact is, on the private side, people are willing to pay more, way more. Because banks may not be their only source of funds. As a matter of fact, banks may not fund at all, have an interest in funding. Maybe they're overexposed. Maybe they're buying lots of investment real estate. And when you get to a certain level in investments, I learned this myself, they'll say, we'll lend to you, but we're going to use commercial rules for you because you own too many single family homes. So we're going to have to give you other rates. You're not going to get the 30-year fixed rate locked in at a particular rate. We're going to give you a commercial rate, which means that we get to reprice this every 5 years. Kind of interesting, right? Banks make those rules, but you can make your own rules. That's what I like, is you can actually underwrite. You get to choose the terms. Now, there's all sorts of different ways this is done. And I know in Orlando and many other places in Florida, I know quite a few people who actually do this for a living. They lend money. I say, well, how do they get enough money to lend? Well, that's their own stories. Maybe they had a business beforehand. Maybe they're just brokering those loans for other people. That's an interesting thing. And I start to see a lot of that going on. We're members of a lot of real estate investor associations throughout the state and nationally. And there's always a table, at least 5 or 6 tables of people that lend. The reason they're lending is the demand's there because people in the clubs love real estate. And the local banks just aren't giving them the type of service they want. Most of the time, they just say no. And by the way, the one thing that you may not know is that your IRA can take on debt and provide debt for people that are buying homes. So in other words, if I have an IRA that only has 30 or 40% of the amount that I need to buy a property, other IRA people can lend my IRA that money, according to the terms that both people agree to. Now, if I'm lending the money, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure, Lester, that I make the terms that I want, right? It's my money, right? Now, you don't have to take it. You can negotiate with me, or you can go deal with another lender. But this is my retirement. I'm going to make sure that it follows the rules I like. And the number one rule on it is you got to love the security that you have. You have to love, and we'll touch on that a little bit. The second thing is, and I think most private lenders, they say, I want to look to the integrity of the person. Even though I have something that I could foreclose on, if you don't pay me, I don't want to go through that. It's a pain, it's a hassle. I'm in the business of lending money, not foreclosing property. If I'm in the business of foreclosing property, I better shut down my lending because means that I'm not doing a really good job. Now, there's all sorts of ways you can go to these. There's lots of lending institutions for private lenders. They have conferences. I've been to many of them, spoken at many of them, and I would suggest you go on the internet and find out these places, because if you're going to go start creating notes, it's really smart for you to be educated. Now, you can go and be very, very successful without any education. You can do that in most places, but it's well worth the cost. And they're not expensive to go to these events. And now all of a sudden, I can meet 1,000 people that are all different levels of understanding and all different types of lending that goes on. Hugely encourage you to do that. But if you want to become that person yourself. Now, what's the first part is I would look at is the length of the term is probably the next most important thing. Everybody has their own favorite list. So you look at the security, you look at the person, the history of the person that's borrowing the money, but you look at the length of the time that you're going to pay this off of. Because one of your biggest risks you have when you lend money is interest rate changes, right? So if you put a loan out there that's good for 5, 10, up to 30 years, and you can do that if you like. Right now we don't know where interest rates are. It's around 6%. And, I'm old enough to remember when it was 15, 16%. Can it go there again? You'd be a fool to say, no, it can never go there again. Can you get back down to 0.5%? Can the Fed rate get down to 0.5%? Absolutely, it did it before. So we've seen this sort of bookends to all of this. The longer you go out there, you're going to risk it. And if it moves up too quickly, a lot of people can't pay you, especially if your loan reprices. So if you're going to go long, have a repricing in your system so that it takes into account, and you can tie it if you like to the Fed rate and say it's the Fed rate +3, +4, +5. That's what the banks do. And you can do it the same way, and you can have your own index. You can create your own index. Have as much fun as you can, but also be prudent. So it's moving up. You can have inflationary terms in it. You get to choose what it is. All right. You can put prepayment penalties on it. You can put terms that if collections are necessary, they pay your lawyer. And by the way, if you're lending in your IRA, the interesting thing is that they're not paying you, they're paying your IRA. So that means if you have to take any legal action against the borrower, you take it through your IRA. Your IRA would purchase the services of an attorney to write the letters and go get it done. So you make all those decisions as the self-directed IRA owner, but it's really up to you to do it. Some people think that it's really, really hard to find people that want to borrow money at 10%, at 12%. I've seen it on these tables at the Rios, 14 to 16% with 2 or 3 points. Now, some people know what points are, but what it really is a 1%. Each point is 1% of the loan amount. And you can actually have them pay that, if you negotiate it, you can have them pay that when the loan is issued, or you can have them pay it at the back end when the loan is paid off. It's really up to you. Another little secret is the people that are doing this all the time, the transaction fees that we charge for a self-directed IRA, why would you ever pay that yourself when you call those the loan fees that your borrower is going to pay? Does that make sense? So it becomes a no cost to you and a much, much better thing. You should secure it. These are really good rewards that you can have it. And if you are typically lending your own money, if you're doing this outside of your IRA, you're never going to get long-term capital gains. So that interest income always hits you, and it hits you hard because you're going to be taxed as if you earned it in your labor. That's the rate that you're going to be charged. Of course, if you do it inside your IRA, there isn't. All right. Typically, you've heard the term hard money loans. It's an interesting thing. It's like saying a self-directed IRA. People start to kind of think they know what it means. A hard money loan means you focus first on the secured interest that you're going to get, and then you secondly focus on the individual. So it's not like the bank, and the reason for that is that if you're on the other side, which is if you're borrowing money inside an IRA and someone else is paying you, the interesting thing is you will not get my personal guarantee if my IRA is borrowing. I can't give it to you because I'm a disqualified party. I can't transact with my IRA. And you say, well, Glenn, what do you mean by that? Well, it basically means that the only thing that I can put up is the security instrument in what I'm buying, but I can't put up my personal assets. Because then I would be using my personal assets to protect my Roth or my IRA, any kind of IRA. And so therefore, that would be illegal to do. So in this case, we're looking at it focused on you providing the IRA, the money to go out and lend. So there's some great advantages to that. Collateral is really something that is to secure a loan, and it's put on the loan documents, and a lot of times it's issued out. It's kind of what a mortgage is. It's basically the idea in the state of Florida is you own the property, but it's subject to a lien being paid off. In some states, you don't actually own the property until it's actually paid off, which is interesting. In Florida, they don't have that. So once again, it's my recommendation that you always have it secured. Now here's a question. There's some things that probably you wouldn't want to hold in an IRA. Could you secure it? Could you use it to secure a loan? Well, probably. I'll give you the practical side of that. So let's say that I have a nice boat, and Tabitha, you're interested in maybe one day owning my boat. If I don't pay you back, right? So I put the boat title on that, secure it, right? So I go to the state of Florida, I provide them the pink slip, right? And it's got the name of your IRA on it as a secured lender on it. So I get the money. I'm not using it to buy a boat. Well, it doesn't matter. You can lend it to me for whatever reason. So I'm going to use it for something else, but I got a security interest in the boat. Well, what are you going to do with a boat in an IRA? Probably you might even run afoul of some of the rules of what you're owning. So what are you going to do with that? And now all of a sudden, I didn't pay you back. I don't like this example because it paints me as the bad guy.
Yeah.
The guy that doesn't pay. But let's continue on with that. So you go, dang, I like that boat. Well, don't get too affixed to this boat because you can't really have it in your IRA. So you say, well, now you're in a quandary. What do you do? Well, what you do is there's a big business in buying and selling notes. I don't know if you know that, but that's an enormous business. Non-performing notes, performing notes. I just want to sell it early. I need the money right now. I'll discount the note and sell it to you that way. Well, the fact is you would resell that note with the security instrument. Let somebody else go get the boat. And if that boat's worth a lot of money and you're about to foreclose on it, I'll pay you a premium on that because the boat's worth $100,000. You only lent it $50,000. So I'll go ahead and take that. So understand that there's some sort of benefit to that. So the collateral, much better to get some collateral than no collateral. All right? Makes sense? So here's what can happen. It's the worst case. And, everybody kind of looks at this. It's so funny. I travel quite a bit for my work. And sometimes there's those times that you're sitting next to somebody, you just don't want to talk at all. But talking is how you engage. So I kind of forced myself not to put the earphones in, not quite, and talk. And so I was going to talk to a conference of single family rentals, SFRs. There's so many of these in the country. But there's some really big conventions that I had to talk to. And they said, oh yeah, I used to own a couple of pieces of real estate. I hated it. So I sold it. I said, what was the problem? He said, they're always calling me and all that. I said, was it a good investment? Well, yeah, I made 40-50% on the properties. All they could think about is the hassle. I said, well, I'm really confused because why wouldn't you just get a property manager? Yes, you're going to lose 10% of their revenues or 8% or whatever they're charging, but you'd still have those houses appreciating. Oh, I just can't be bothered. They go all the way to the pain, and then they won't use the logic to get out of the pain. So when they think about it like this, I'm owning this piece, well, why did they have this as their collateral? I mean, today you don't have to drive past these places. You can see satellite photos, you can see all the purchase history, you can see almost all of it, but I still wouldn't take anyone collateral unless somebody that I knew and trusted or myself went and took a look at the property. So that's kind of silly because it could look like this, and well, I hope that's not the IRA, the way the IRA lender looks at this. But it's not a bad idea. Now, what do you think about from the lender's perspective? Don't loan if you don't want to own, right? That's pretty good. Pay for repairs after they are done. A lot of times people will, the rehabbers will be one of your biggest recurring buyers or borrowers. They can't go and get the kind of loans they need. And by the way, your down payment, who decides how big the down payment is? Any idea? You. For your loan. You do, right? So you're in control. So you can make that determination. You got to be willing to foreclose, and it's a good idea. Get title insurance for your loan. Flood insurance if you're concerned about floods. The taxes are paid, and you'll be surprised on how many of these aren't paid, the taxes. And get a personal guarantee always, even if you're doing it and an LLC signs, you need to get all the way through to the person that's going to do it. Let's talk about the practicalities of this for just a moment. I generally don't go create my own loans. Some of us, I don't call it laziness, I would just call it lack of experience. And I haven't gotten to become that level of going to all these conferences. I speak at them, but I don't usually attend them for all the knowledge I get. I like private lending because I can take things that are between things. I'll buy property in my IRAs, but what happens when I sell it and it's going to sit there for a while? Can I do a loan for 40 days, 60 days, 90 days? Yes, I can, but I generally can't do it myself. So I go find hard money lenders and I provide them my money, my IRA money. I like this. So it's nothing more than like procuring the services of a property manager in your rental properties. Think of it as you're renting money. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in somebody's hand, but I'm going to make sure they get title insurance. I'm going to make sure that I'm first lien holder on all of these. These individuals are in every community, I will tell you. And they're very happy to put your money to work. They might pay you 8%, 9%, 10%. They're going to go to market at 15%, 14%. So you're basically fueling their gas. They're making money from your money. Should you ever be upset about anybody making money with your money?
No.
Heck no. I mean, if you're a realtor, you'd be saying, oh my goodness, look, this guy flipped this house and made all that money. And I go to the realtor and say, you could have done it. You saw it first. Well, I can't afford it. I don't want the pressure. I don't want to do, I can't do all these things. Well, it gave you a commission, right? So you can be on one side or the other, but you can't be on both sides. I can't get 15% on my money unless I'm finding those deals myself and I'm going through all that. And if I'm running a business, which I am, then I'm not going to be very good at running my business if I'm going to have to do that. So the practical things are you can write the notes yourself, but you can also fund somebody else who's writing those notes for you. So here's just a quick summary. IRAs can loan money. All the interest, all the proceeds of that loan go into your IRA. You don't touch the money. You can have it tax deferred or tax free. And that's kind of a sense of, it could be in a Roth IRA or a non-Roth IRA. You got to lend at arm's length. This means no special deal for family members, no special deal for friends. To pay off a loan somewhere else, you're going to lend your IRA at a lower amount. You're not allowed to do this. And make sure that getting your money back is more important than the return. You're not going to obsess about the return. There are some deals out there that I've done, not in lending, but investments that I felt like I was elated just to get my principal back. So make sure that you're focused on people and deals that can get the principal back. So that took about 35 minutes, and we have some time for questions. Maggie, are there any questions that anybody's brought in? And would you like to tell me?
We have two questions.
Okay.
The first one is, how do I find a deal like this?
A deal like this. Okay. Well, from a standpoint, if you are not a member or have not attended a RIA, a real estate investment association near you, chances are, if you're near any metropolitan area, that's to do it. Secondly, you can certainly Google for hard money lenders in your area. I would suggest that you don't go deal with anybody until you have a good sense of who they are and their history. And they've got to be able to share all of that with you, including asking the questions, when's the last foreclosure you've had? What's your process of going through this? Can I have my attorney look through the documents? All of those kinds of things. You have to vet it out yourself. But the key is to get into the community where everybody's lending. And a lot of times, if you go talk to a real estate broker near you, they'll know who the private lenders are because they're in the business of representing homes, the buying and selling of homes, and they'll know those you can access it that way.
All right.
Thanks for the question.
Our second question is, what are other examples of things you can use as collateral?
Just about anything. And I would say there's two things that go on with collateral. Number one is something that's attractive to you. Now, I told you the earlier example of the boat. It may be attractive to you, but you can't use it. But chances are, if it's attractive to you, it's also attractive to other people. So you can sell the note with that still attached to it. It doesn't really matter what you choose. The other part is it's not how attractive also it is to you. It's how sad it will be for the lender to use it, to lose it. So what's more important is how much he or she likes the boat that owes your IRA money. So I would focus on those two things. I would also focus on things that have a titling associated with it, rather than, oh, you can have my dirt bike that's not licensed on the road, and you can come get it. And of course, by the time you come get it, it's locked away or given away, and you're chasing the collateral. So you don't want to have to chase the collateral. It's got to be something that you can come get.
Awesome.
Any questions in the audience today?
Glenn, if I were to lend to a hard money lender through my self-directed IRA, how do I determine what it's secured in?
Yeah, well, it is no different than if you're making this loan yourself. You're going to sit down and say, what they have is they have a list of people that always, it amazes me, they always have your loan placed like this. There's always people that have new deals. So they're going to go down and say, would you like this deal? This deal is on raw land. And what he does is he builds duplexes on raw land. So what you're going to end up doing is funding construction draws on this land. Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to send you all the documents, and you're going to be able to see the progress. Well, that's one kind. The other kind is someone that buys a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home and needs $60,000 of work on it, and you can fund that deal. Those are negotiations with them. If they're good at all, they're used to doing this. So they're going to give you your choice. There's never a deal that I've done that I didn't have a choice of 3 or 4 different deals to go in. And after a while, they get comfortable. They don't want anything to go wrong. And this is one of the beauties of becoming part of the RIAs and the local groups, because once you become part of that local group, and if something goes wrong, you're going to tell everybody in that group. That's like the worst thing possible. I've seen hard money lenders actually foreclose on properties. They may not be completely whole, but they always make the individual whole that lent them the money, because they never want that on their reputation. Don't feel sorry for them, because they've made a lot of money on all the other loans, but they want to absorb the risk and not passing it on to you. So if you're dealing with someone credible and reputable that's been in the business and doing this 20 years, I would stay away from someone that's got a 2-year track record. They're not going to do that. And they learn also, it's great, because you want them to learn in down markets. I want to know what happened in 06 and 07. Did they have foreclosures? How did they get through that? What was the process? So that maybe that takes a little bit of people with gray hair like you and I. They can't be young in the business, because I want to see a track record. Yes, Tabitha.
Once the note is established, can you change the terms of the loan?
Why would you do that, Tabitha?
Say like the person that is taking the loaned money from your account, they want to refinance in a way.
Stretch it out because they can't make the payments?
Maybe something.
Maybe. Of course you can. Yeah, you have full freedom to do whatever you can. What you can't do is give it away. This is why the IRS doesn't want you to lend to family members and stuff, because some people would view it as a way, I'll take your IRA and I'm gonna give it to my sister, or I'm gonna give it to my mother because I'm gonna go buy her property and I'm gonna do all this stuff. I have heard it all. And at some time in my 20 years here, since NuView was established, I've heard everything. And they come to me and confess, which I really hate, because I would rather them ask the question first. And hopefully most of the time they're confessing they're doing business with a different custodian, right? But yeah, you have the ability to change the terms at any time, as long as there's a business sense for doing so. They may want to come back for more money, right? And you can take a look and say, I'll lend them more money because they've already made my collateral property so much better. They added another room on, I can see the value of it going up. I don't mind giving you more money. By the way, my job is to make as much money as I can in the IRA. So I don't lose sight of that. And I think a lot of people don't have the next deal ready. And because they don't have the next deal ready, the money's just sitting there. So it's always smart to have the next deal ready. Dealing with the hard money guys and the lenders, the private lenders, my money doesn't have to sit very long. It may have to sit for 2 or 3 weeks while they're looking for the next deal, or they're trying to organize it, but that's it. It's a pretty great way to do it.
I was at a real estate investor association meeting on Saturday, and turns out I was sitting next to a private lender. So we're already corresponding back and forth on some other stuff, but I agree, that's where I would meet a hard money or private lending individuals.
Yeah, I mean, when you start to see where money is right now, money is around 5% as far as if you're lending it out to banks or on CDs and that type of thing. When you can figure you can get close to doubling that on private lending, and it's probably equally as safe. There's this whole concept that everybody is fearful of doing private deals. And I love private deals because I can negotiate them. And I can't negotiate anything. I can't negotiate with a bank for the CD rates. They say, no, a 3-year CD is going to be 4.95%, and this is how it pays. I go, well, I'd like it to pay monthly. Oh, no, this pays quarterly. This pays annually. Everything's fed to you like that, and you as the consumer have to take what they feed you. And I love the fact that I can sit and negotiate with it. So that's a really good point. So what I'd like to do is to wrap up, if I can, and you can always get a hold of us at NuViewTrust.com. And there's a text, I think, yes, there's a text called Lend. Go ahead and text us to that number. Text us at 407-305-0638. You can always call our main number and get through to somebody too and say, I want some more knowledge on lending. Happy to do it. When I started this company 20 years ago, it was all because I bought my first piece of real estate. I found a bank that would do it. They did it for me. And my entire retirement and those of about 20,000 other people changed that day that we opened the account, because now people understand that they're starting to get it. There's a lot of people that will dissuade you from doing it, but be careful about who those people are dissuading, because they may not know and say they know, but they also may have a vested interest that you don't do this. So, as always, all the best in your investments, and I wish all of you the best and Godspeed, and thanks so much for joining us for today's presentation.